After last week's exceptionally well made and universally praised episode Long Time, which brought us the love story between Bill and Frank, what will the fourth episode have in store for us? Will it be another backstory with Joel and Ellie just being side characters again? Or will it focus on the two of them, putting them front and center? Who else will we meet in this episode, and will it be as good as the last one? If you like to have my take on this, then join me for this review video. Before we start, let's take a moment to remember and say goodbye to Annie Wersching, who tragically passed away a week ago at the age of only 45 years. Annie was lending her voice to Tess in the original game and also provided the motion capture performance. I remember first seeing her in the TV show 24, where she joined the main cast in season 7. The character she played, Renee Walker, was one of my favorite characters on that whole show, and Annie did such a great job on giving that character real depth and likability, which led to her also staying on for the next season. After that, she appeared in many more recurring and main cast roles in shows like Castle, Bosch, The Vampire Diaries, Timeless, Runaways, The Rookie, and most recently as the Borg Queen in Star Trek Picard. When the TV show The Last of Us was announced, I honestly was wondering why she wasn't cast as Tess, because she was the right age, she was a well-known and established actor, so who better to cast in a role that she originated? Knowing now that she was continuing acting but was struggling with cancer since the middle of 2020, I can assume that maybe she was asked but unfortunately had to refuse due to her state of health. I just learned about her passing a few days ago and it really hit me. So Annie, thank you for all that you gave us. Farewell, you won't be forgotten. Okay, now let's have a look at the plot of this week's episode. After seeing at the end of last week's episode that Ellie has picked up a gun at Bill and Frank's place, we are reminded of that fact by her trying it out in front of a mirror. Of course, she had hidden away the gun because she asked Joel several times if she can get one to protect herself, which she always denied, either because she's too young for it or because he doesn't trust her, but most likely a mixture of both. We then follow Joel and Ellie on a road trip where the two of them started to actually bond. Mostly over Ellie's use of a book filled with stupid puns, with which she tries to crack Joel up, something that, at least at first, has no effect whatsoever on him. Further along the way, he started to indulge her, and by the end of the episode, he actually cracks up about one of the jokes.
Joel, did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
What?
It runs in your genes.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. When they take their first break and spend the night in a forest, we learn in a solid piece of foreshadowing that Joel is not that much afraid of infected people, because he mostly knows how to handle them and he knows what to do to stay away from them, as he assures Ellie that here in the forest they are far enough removed from everyone who might be infected, so they are safe in that regard. But he strongly highlights that humans are the most dangerous factor in this world now, because humans trying to survive are capable of almost doing everything that comes to their mind. The next day, back on the road again, Joel actually opens up when Ellie asks him about his brother. He tells her that he is a so-called joiner, who years back when the world was still alive, was joining the army because he wanted to be a hero, and also because he wanted to impress women. Even though this didn't play out for Tommy, his brother, as he would have hoped, that didn't keep Tommy from trying. We learned that Tommy was the reason that Tess and Joel were even going to Boston, because Tommy was going there and they were trying to protect him, so they followed. There though, Tommy developed a thing for Marlene, the head of the Fireflies, so he joined that group as well, though Joel and Tess did not follow him there and stayed on their own. That's basically also the reason why Tommy, on a mission for the Fireflies, has left the quarantine zone in Boston, only to later have a fallout with the Fireflies and now being totally on his own again, which was the catalyst for Joel and Tess to try to get in touch with him again. Soon later, Joel and Ellie hit a section of the highway that was barricaded off, so they couldn't follow that path, which forces them to take a detour right through Kansas City. There they are attacked by a group of people.
Please help!
Put your seatbelt on.
Are we gonna help him?
No.
which fortunately can be fought off by Joel, though one of them ultimately managed to sneak up on Joel and almost suffocates him, which is the moment where Ellie reveals that she has a gun and used it to save Joel's life. After Joel then finished off the attacker, who of course now was pleading for mercy and was telling them that they could all be friends and live a peaceful coexistence, the two of them had to hide away because their car was compromised and the people connected to the guys they just killed were now searching for them everywhere. We then learn that the attackers were part of a group of 3 people who just recently overthrew the local totalitarian regime and took over control about the sector that previously was controlled by FEDRA, the Federal Disaster Response Authority, aka the fascist government that currently rules America. That group of civilians is led by a woman named Carolyn, who just recently lost her brother, who was apparently tortured to death by FEDRA. While she's on a mission to find each and every one of the collaborators who worked with FEDRA in the past, with a guy named Henry being on top of her list, she assumes that whoever killed them is working with Henry, and therefore she is putting all their effort into finding Joel and Ellie.
Find who did this. Find every collaborator and kill them all.
We then return to Joel and Ellie to witness him apologizing to her because she had to hurt someone to save his life, which is something a 14-year-old should not have to do. After he learns that this was not the first time she had to hurt someone, he is showing her how to actually use a weapon properly and hands her back the gun. They then made their way to a very high apartment building where they climbed the stairs as high as Joel was able to go, which was quite high but not to the very top of it because, as he mentions to Ellie, he is just a 56-year-old man. There they also found some mattresses and put themselves to sleep, just to be awakened by a man and a boy who are pointing their guns on them. May this be Henry, the guy that Carolyn is looking for? This episode is the first one so far where we didn't have a flashback, even though I was thinking that, while he was talking about Tommy, that maybe there would be a flashback around him. I could imagine that this was the original plan, but since the last episode was 75 minutes long, I guess they didn't want it to have such a long episode again, because this one is just 45 minutes. Almost the entire time we were with Ellie and Joel, except for the few minutes where Carolyn and her men were introduced. And I have to say this was the exact right decision, because we were in desperate need of the two of them bonding and having time together. Because that was something we only saw a little bit on the sidelines in the last few episodes. And there were many moments where Joel actually opened up. A lot of the dynamic between the two of them has changed over the run of this episode. Where at the beginning of this episode, Joel was making clear that Ellie is not family and not even close to it like Tess was, by just calling her cargo, while his acceptance of her, pretty directly referenced by him and his acceptance of her jokes, grew more and more from annoyance to actual enjoyment at the end of the episode. Also, her saving his life probably was a game changer, instilling a lot of trust in her, even though she was hiding the fact that she even had a gun to begin with, which led to him handing it back to her. A clear show of trust on his part that also shows that he most likely at that point would not call her cargo anymore.
We'll get through this.
I know.
Besides that storyline, I guess the main interest of this episode was to show us that even after the world has collapsed, the most dangerous thing are not creatures that might kill us, but still human is the most dangerous part of it all. Something that other shows like The Walking Dead also highlighted quite prominently. Here it is actually very interesting due to the fact that the bad guys weren't actually the bad guys, just people in a difficult situation. And also the fact was highlighted that a lot of times making assumptions might be quite dangerous, because Joel assumed that they are the bad guys and tried to hit one of them with his car from the get-go, which still, looking back, might have been the right decision, because we don't know if they would have acted differently if Joel would have just stopped the car and complied. However, that action also led to the fact that they attacked them straight away, again something they might have done as well, even if he would not have targeted the guy on the street asking for help, which was a clear ploy. But they for sure now assumed that the people in the car were their enemies, so they attacked them tooth and nail. This then pretty much escalated further, because when the guy that Ellie shot was begging for his life, again Joel was not having any of that, assuming that this was just a lie again and killing him without mercy, which in turn led to them being hunted by the whole group. so you never know what would have happened if they wouldn't have just worked on assumptions. It might have ended happily, it might have ended deadly, in any case it would have ended differently. We just don't know how. We also don't know if the other guys that Kathleen is looking for, this Henry, which we are apparently meeting at the end of the episode, is actually someone who did something wrong or just something that she assumed did something wrong. Because we were also shown that she killed someone in cold blood, that she knew her whole life, and of which she knew that he was innocent of being a collaborator, most likely, but she still killed him for the fact that he wouldn't give up Henry's location. I also like that the episode referenced that gasoline is going bad after quite a while, because in many other post-apocalyptic movies, gas is used even after 20 or 30 years without any problems, as if it would never go bad. But here they show that it will deteriorate and almost become water after a few years, so it wouldn't work as well as fresh one. It's those small things of accuracy that I really enjoy in this show. But also returning to Ellie, there's one interesting fact, and that is that she mentioned that she has hurt someone before, which could reference what happened in the previous episode where she killed one of the infected, basically releasing him. But it could also refer to something else, and we still don't know if she is someone who can actually be trusted, or if she might turn out a little bit of a maniac. Something, and this is not a spoiler because I have no idea how the game has ended, I cannot say for sure. The only thing I can say for sure is that in this show they play it very ambivalently. And the other thing that I'm still interested in finding out about is the fact that Ellie appears to be immune. Because as a reminder, in the first episode, an expert about fungi was saying that if a fungus would mutate to the point where it could attack and control humans, there would be no way to heal it or counteract it. So unless basic science didn't change since the 60s when that segment took place, I'm very curious to find out how they will explain that, or if it even is true. One last thing that I look forward to find out more about is that situation that this civilian group encounters in the cellar of one of the apartment buildings, where the floor is all cracked up and appears to be breathing or moving or something along those lines. Is there a new gigantic creature beneath that we haven't seen yet? Or was the fungus just creating cracks in the ground, which means that it will soon break through and might infect everyone? I guess the latter, but we will likely find out in the next episode. With that being said, the only thing that is left is going into the rating. But before we go there, let me ask you to like and share this video if you enjoyed it so far. And if you are no subscriber yet, maybe consider to change that. By also hitting the notification bell, you will get a heads up for most of my new videos. Now for the rating. I overall enjoyed this episode very much, and even with this comparatively short runtime of 45 minutes, it made the best of its time to paint a nice picture of how the two of them bonded, getting closer to each other, earning each other's trust to a certain degree, and actually starting to get very friendly with each other. It also very nicely highlighted the fact that in a world that went crazy, there is no real good or bad, there is only a grey zone in which you can navigate. Also highlighted by the fact that Joel never answered the question if he has killed innocent people in his past, with his silence saying a lot, especially after he admitted that they have robbed people in the past. It's also highlighted with that new group that was introduced, because they seem to be the good guys, fighting against the fascists, but the methods they use now also don't seem that well mannered. I guess originally they meant well, took a little bit of a wrong turn without even noticing, and overall just trying the best they can in a situation that is a shit show from the get-go. In that regard, this episode did a great job in providing character development as well as doing exposition for this new group, doing world building by explaining how things work, while also bringing the overall plot forward. Nicely done. Putting this all into an actual score is quite tough. I know that I enjoyed last week's episode a little bit more, and even though this does not qualify as a proper criterion, I will use it to measure this episode against that one. I guess the main reason why last week's episode was more impactful was the fact that they had a real emotional angle on it. Something that was missing this week, but also is something I guess you cannot have in every episode, especially since this episode was concentrating on different things. Even though I'm not 100% sure what they could have done differently to make me score this episode higher, at the end of the day, rating a movie or episode of a TV show is always connected to your gut feeling. and my gut feeling tells me let's go with 8 out of 10 points, which is a great score and means most things were done very well. So if you think I should have scored it higher, please excuse me, because this is the only way I can approach things. And again, 8 points out of 10 is already a fantastic score, and as one would expect that a show like this is getting better with each week, we also need to leave a little bit of leeway for the show to reach even higher. What about you? Would you have scored this episode differently, or do you think I was scoring it too high? Without spoiling things that you might know from the games, in case you have played them, how do you think Ellie's character will develop along the line? Is she to be trusted? Or should Joel be very cautious? Whatever you think, feel free to share it in the comments. So much for now, see you next time and thanks for watching. Soon later, Joel and Ellie hit a section of the highway that was barricaded off, so they couldn't follow that path.